Every unpleasant feeling you experience is telling you about a need you're not meeting. From hunger and sleep to compassion and growth, you are your wisest advisor. You are the best person to know what you need. How often do you check in with yourself? But even more, what do you do with that information? It's not always easy to understand or accept what we learn about ourselves. And that is where self-honesty really becomes handy. Welcome to a new episode of Conversations on Congruency. I am Tanya Gerard, your congruency coach, and I empower you through your transition processes so you can understand your experiences, integrate them in the story of your life, and create a life on your own terms. Today, I will start a conversation about honesty. Honesty applied to your communication with yourself. So what do I mean when I say honesty? We grow up in a social context, and this social context provides us with ideas, beliefs, and values that create a structure for our decisions. This structure starts outside of us, but becomes part of ourselves. The way that structure regulates our decisions is through self-judgment. When we consider an option, when we tell something to ourselves, and we critique ourselves, we become critical, we disapprove, we discard, we just want it to go out. No, this is not true. No, this is not right. That is the outer structure getting into ourselves and hijacking our own honesty process. Other way you can see when something is getting in your way, when you're trying to be honest, is your ego. Here's the thing. We grow up in a culture of competition, of comparison. We are constantly fed with the idea that we need to be better, more. We need to be right. This dynamic, as a society, it's, a very complicated thing. But the thing is that it also gets into you. And it becomes what some people refer to as your ego. So sometimes we have a thought, we have an idea, we even have a need, but it makes us feel weak, it makes us feel worse, it makes us feel in a way that does not satisfy our competition or comparison criteria. And then there's another element. Remember this outer structure I just mentioned? Okay, if it was just an abstract structure, it might be, it could be easier to dismantle. But the problem is that this structure also takes the form of our meaningful relationships. Think about family, close friends, our partners. And sometimes our needs will, in our mind, will create hurt to others or will not live to somebody else's expectations. And that creates a feeling of guilt, of disappointing somebody else's desires upon ourselves. So why I'm telling you this? Because To define honesty, I believe we first need to name what comes in our way to honesty. So honesty, as I understand it, within the congruency system, means the voice that comes from a place of self-respect, of freedom from other people's expectations, of honor in the sense that we know we are creating value and well-being for ourselves, for other people, for the world in general. And we are capable of speaking a truth, even if it disappoints our own expectations about it. Let's work with this. The first thing is when, I'm going to leave my notebook there. So, first thing we mentioned, judgment. I feel really sad when I hear somebody telling themselves what other people would tell them. When somebody tells themselves that they are something, they are stupid, they are weak, it's usually obviously a negative word. They did not create that word. They did not create that judgment. They only let the outside judgment to get into themselves. So, honesty in the first place needs to shut down that judgment. We have explored a little bit about this, but I think the most effective way to explore this shutting down the judgment is being curious. When you're curious, you're not anticipating a result. You don't know what's going to happen, and it doesn't matter because you are engaged in a curious observation. You are engaged in the process of discovering. So, when you're engaged in the process of discovering your own need, you shut down any judgment. Which brings us to guilt. An honest conversation with ourselves starts with the principle of well-being. If you haven't watched that episode, I invite you to watch it because well-being is key for congruency. Well-being means making the decisions that you know that will create value for yourself in the first place, and that will enable you to create value for other people. When you are not okay, when you are in pain, when you are in need, when you are low in energy, when you are not in alignment, when you are not in agreement, you are not capable of creating value for anybody. And this can take the simpler forms. The guilt can take the simpler forms. I am very, very hungry. For example, this is an example from the culture I grew up with. I grew up in Mexico. And in Mexico, food is part of hospitality and good manners. Food is, as any culture, but I think it's very evident in Mexican culture that food is a form of relating to other people. So every single person is expected to offer some of their food to the people that are there. It is not well seen at all if you're in the middle of a group conversation, you take out a sandwich and you start eating without asking or offering, do you want a piece of this? Now, suppose you had one of these work days. you started to work at 5 in the morning. You had time to, have coffee, pretty much. You have been running around, and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you finally got a sandwich. Somebody produced it for you. You don't even know how it was. You're not even sure it's yours, but you're starving. What do? Do you bring it out, offer it to the 6 people you're working with, and risk not having a piece of sandwich? Or did you just start eating? It's just an example about guilt. So, if in this culture, the belief is that if you do not offer food, you are not being hospitable to other people. And that could create guilt in this imaginary person, because of course you want to be hospitable. Of course you want to be a good host and a good team member, a good colleague. So there's one honesty question. Do I really want to share my sandwich or not? And this is just a very simple, light example. But when we talk about relationships, when we talk about the way we relate to other people, if we tell something to somebody, that's when honesty plays a really, really important role. So let's recap until now. Honesty is the main ingredient of a conversation with yourself. In order to create sustainable well-being, you need to address your needs. And these needs might contradict or create a conflict with the social expectations that have gotten into your inner structure in the form of judgment or guilt, or they can be in conflict with your ego who needs to be right, who needs to be better, and who needs to be more. So, one step to create honesty, self-honesty, would be to turn down judgment, to turn down guilt. And in order to see this, we can activate curiosity, because curiosity focuses on the discovery, not on the outcome. When you are curious about something or somebody, in this case, when you become curious about yourself, you turn down judgment because you're just very interested in what you're discovering. You're not focused on the results, but in the discovering process, in the information you find. Now, what gets in the way of honesty? The fear of hurting others. This can be a topic for a whole new episode, but it all comes back to the idea of, if you are not okay, if you're not creating well-being for yourself, you will not be capable of creating well-being for other people. So, if you find something that you feel can hurt other people, somebody else, and you stop, you do not meet that need because you're afraid of hurting somebody else, on the long term, that relationship will have an even worse destiny. When we find something about our needs and we do not communicate it with somebody with whom we have a significant relationship, we create resentment. can be something like really tough. Hey, could you consider taking down those 30 pounds you just got this year? Or, hey, you know what? I really, really, really don't enjoy your jokes. I don't feel respected when you say them. I need to know that you're taking my feelings in account when you're joking. Those are delicate situations. We might fear that we hurt somebody with this, but on the long term, you're preventing resentment to build up. You are providing yourself with well-being so you can continue creating well-being and value for your loved ones as well. Something else that can get in the way of honesty with yourself is the sense of loss. And this has to do with this is related with the ego conversation. There are expectations. People have expectations about us, about you, about me. Individually, expectations with a name, and expectations of a woman, a man in X situation. When we consciously decide not to fulfill those expectations because they are not aligned with what will create well-being for us, we are committing transgression. And we will pay a price for that. So if you're driving every day at work and you're crying on your way at work, and you're driving back home and you're crying on your drive home because you hate your life, and you feel there's nothing you can do, you know what? Yes, but maybe you don't want to see it. What? When somebody answers me, when one of my clients says, I don't know, I always ask, what is that you don't know? Because you obviously do, but maybe it's too scary to say out loud. So, yes, maybe it will be a price for it. Yes, maybe when you're honest with yourself, you will lose something or somebody. But again, we are playing the long-term game here. And long-term, it might be 10 years, it might be 85 when you're 85. It's a long-term game because at the end of the day, yes, life is the sum of all our experiences, but we are the ones, you are the one who goes to bed every night and needs to sleep with yourself and with your decisions. Also, uncertainty is scary. When we are honest about something, when we discover a need that we didn't know was there, and sometimes it's even a need that we are not supposed to have, uncertainty is scary. We might not even know how to meet that need. How do I create compassion for myself? How do I create autonomy for myself? Those are authentic, legit needs. But uncertainty is scary, and we might not know how to start. We might not have a model. And that is a very important part of a journey to congruency. Some people find congruency in their own context. Some people need to leave their context. I left my country. I left my culture to find congruency because my needs were not met there. And it was scary, but it was scarier to stay there. We also have the habit of not being honest. And, okay, we might take this. Comment if you want me to explore this thing. But being honest does not mean creating conflict per se. So let's be careful with that. You can be honest with yourself and other people from a constructive perspective. If we need to create conflict, it is because it will be the catalyst to the change we want to create. When it's conflict just because it's fun, then you're satisfying your ego, but you're probably not even there in your honest conversation there. So the honesty is a habit. You need to build it. You need to learn it. You need to practice it every day. A good question to practice honesty is why? Why am I doing this? Why am I feeling this? Why am I not doing this? Why am I not saying this? That why is a very powerful word, as you know. And here's the last thing, which is probably the most important. Your judgment, your self-judgment, gets in the way of being self-honest because you need to let go of the idea you have of yourself. Don't even consider the ideas other people have of you. Like, what idea do you have for yourself? Oh, no, I'm not that person. No, I absolutely are not interested. Aren't you? If you constantly feel your heart is being scooped out, if you live knowing that you could experience more joy, if you could feel more inspired, if you could feel more hopeful, if you constantly live feeling that you're living somebody else's life, this is not the one that fits you, then you know what? Maybe you're not who you think you are. And that is okay. Because if you become curious in a way of discovering who you are, you'll probably get a lot of wisdom in the process. And you end up creating the life that fits you. So honesty is a constant exercise that starts with yourself. And as you acquire the habit of honesty, you can start being honest with other people. And you can start being assertive in your communications. And you can communicate from a place of respect and love and compassion. And at the same time, protect your needs and the needs of the other people. But that is for another episode. So thank you so much. I hope some of these ideas have been helpful for you. I invite you to comment always. Tell me, is this helpful? Is this relevant? If you're watching this video in Facebook, I invite you to go find my page and like it. Tanya Gerard, Congruency Coach. And share this video with somebody who might need to listen these ideas. Have fun, be honest with yourself, and enjoy the amazing process of discovering who you are and what's the life that you want to create for yourself. Bye-bye.